Ooh, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to some more Division 2 content, Jack of All Trades channel. I am wrapping up all of that videos that I've been putting out on the Chameleon and Exodus combo. It's been amazing. I have been loving it. That's why you've been seeing so many videos. And we're culminating that here with the build video, the full guide for the setup that I'm going to be using and keeping in my loadout inventory. Let's check it out. Alright, so here's the build overview. We're going to go over some quick stats so you can get a feel for what this build is. Now, if you haven't seen it already, you got to check out the synergy that's going on between the Chameleon and the Exodus, both of these exotics. They are super strong together. We found this synergy, and it is awesome at keeping the Chameleon at high uptime. So that's the purpose of this setup. This is used mostly for legendary. You can use this in other content. I'm sure it'll perform well, but it's really in legendary that this build shines because, again, it's taking advantage of that synergy to refresh the buffs on the Chameleon. And you only really need to do that in legendary. If you're playing easier content, you can kind of just clear the stages fast enough so that you refresh the Chameleon naturally. In legendary contexts is where we're taking advantage of that synergy so that we keep it going. The build type here is mostly a DPS build. I don't want to call it a DPS tank because we're not exactly tanky, but it's got survivability built into it. And as you can see, we're running half blues, but the rest of it is very damage oriented. We're trying to put in the work on the damage front. And the playstyle is high risk, high reward. It is very aggressive. If you've seen the gameplay, we are getting in there. And once you start getting used to the playstyle with the timing, with the Chameleon and the smoke screen and everything going on, it does take some getting used to. But once you do, you've seen some highlights in the shorts in my gameplay. It's really strong and it's really satisfying and fun to pull off. It's rewarding for sure. But yeah, we're running a Revive High for a reason. Farmability, easy to medium. It's strikers. We're only rolling 2 pieces of strikers off their core. The Exodus gloves are guaranteed drop this season if you go through the season levels. So do that to get that new exotic. Hopefully you have a Chameleon already. And we're running a named piece on the chest. Now luckily we're keeping it core blue, so it shouldn't be too bad to farm. I want to say easy medium for this one. Let's get into the game now and look at the individual pieces and talk about everything that's going on with this build. Alright, y'all, we're in game now here. Let's take a look at the build, okay? We got a lot of things going on that go a little deeper than what it seems like on the surface. This is not just a Strikers DPS build. Of course, we have the Exodus gloves, proccing that smoke screen, and cooldown 40 seconds, Chameleon, 45 seconds on its buffs. I've talked about it before. I'm not going to go too deep into it in the build video. You should have already seen the other clips talking about that synergy that's going on, but we're building around it. My goal was to try to make a setup where you can focus on getting the timing right in the buffs with the Chameleon and the smoke screen, and then get back into action as easily and quickly as possible. And that's why we're running the core piece here, everyday carrier named Bellstone chest. Now, I actually was super surprised and impressed with this piece. I have never used it before. Efficient was not a talent that I ever used on the chest. Perfectly efficient seemed, I've never liked the ideas of armor kits. I've always built around having sustainability outside the armor kit and only using it as a backup because they're consumable. So you can't guarantee that you'll always have it, whereas armor on kill, if you get the kill, you know you're getting it. You don't need to rely on picking up, from crates like the armor kit does. But I thought it made sense on this setup to kit up as we get back into action from the smoke screen. And let me tell you, that 75% chance to not consume the armor kit makes them last a really long time. I have been loving this chest. It's super powerful. And now that we have the quick armor kit with the 2-tap, and you'll get that 25% of your armor you could be pretty dang liberal with using that double tap to get your armor back just a little bit during combat without having to take the time to put a full kit in. But let me tell you, you are rewarded if you get a full kit off, because on top of that, 75% chance to not consume it, specialization armor kit bonuses are increased by 100%. And that's what ties into the specialization. Quickly before we get into that, secondary doesn't matter. Pistol doesn't matter. We were using the Chameleon the entire time, and the whole point is keeping the buffs up. If you swap off, you're going to lose the buffs, so you shouldn't be using anything other than the Chameleon in this setup. And then, on the surface, yes, strikers. I've been liking the balance of half blue. So we got 3 blue cores, Exodus comes with red, and crit chance, crit damage. And so we're leaning into the damage with the strikers with the backpack, and have some blue cores and enough crit everywhere. Of course, with the Chameleon, stat-wise, you want to aim for 40% crit chance, and then put everything else into crit damage. And for my mods, I'm also running crits. I'm not doing anything with protection from elites or anything like that. We're going straight damage for general purpose legendary. So let's get back into talking more about this chest, which will lead me to the specialization. So let's head over here. We talked about specialization bonus increased by 100%. That firewall armor kit, the armor kit recovers over 10 seconds, but it recovers 200% armor and 200% health. And so that's getting increased by another 100% of this. So that is a lot of armor, and you'll see it in the gameplay. You can take hits and your armor just goes back so fast. It's a crazy amount of regen, and it'll give you a lot of sustainability when you pop that full armor kit. And I just dropped a short that was textbook play of timing the armor kit so that it finishes right when you get cracked, right when smokescreen's done, so that you can go back into the action. As soon as you proc smokescreen, your buffs are fully active, and then you're back in action with full armor as well. And that was a really important part of the build, was that chest with the armor kits, because we're trying to take advantage of smokescreen, but to proc smokescreen, it works on armor break. So we're purposely getting shot and losing all of our armor. And Strikers doesn't come with any armor recovery at all. It's just damage. Hunters is another thing I tested. We'll talk more in variations, but that has some recovery. You know, one way or another, we needed recovery. Because if we're constantly going to get our armor broken, we need our armor, first of all, to get back up so it can get broken again in that 40 seconds, right? But you don't want to be squishy. You don't want to be playing without armor. And we're running 3 blues for a reason, but 3 blues and not having any armor recovery is not going to be worth a lot if you're running on just health. And that is, exactly why I've been leaning into the everyday carrier as a core piece of this build. I think it works really great with this Exodus Chameleon synergy. And Striker just kind of fills in the rest for damage. The other specialization I was testing was Gunner, because it innately comes with 10% armor on kill, which I did quite like, again, for sustainability, to get our armor back up. Because we're running Bellstone, we do have 1% armor regen, but we have no armor on kill. And the armor kit here repairs 100% of your armor, of course, but also grants you 30% bonus armor, and that's increased by 100%. So we're getting more than half, should be 60% of your armor in bonus armor when you proc this armor kit. So it's also pretty strong, but I think the Firewall one is a little bit stronger if you can't get used to that armor recovery over time and get a feel for it. And the other reason why Firewall is really good is because of the shield here. So let's start talking about skills. So if you look at our skills, we now have access, using Firewall, to the Striker Shield, which is giving me an extra 12% damage bonus per enemy that's close, and we're playing very much up close with this build. So on top of the survivability that we're getting from a 2.6 million health shield, we're also getting extra damage, which is great. Who doesn't like more damage? Now, is it worth running Firewall just for the shield? I don't think so, and that's why I've actually never put out a build using Firewall before. I typically go Technician almost 100% of the time. I probably say like 80% of the time, and then Gunner the rest of it. I have like my rifle build uses Sharpshooter, but Firewall doesn't have, for me, enough in the rest of the tree to make running it just for the shield worth it. But now we're actually taking advantage of the Specialization armor kit as well. So it's synergizing really well with us getting an extra 12% from the shield. And our other skill is the Revive Hive. I highly recommend you run the Revive Hive. We are going to be risking going down a lot. I talk about how it's a high risk, high reward. You're purposely letting yourself get shot. And there's sometimes where you're expecting smokescreen and it doesn't happen. And so if you're breaking your armor, you're going to go down. And having the Revive Hive able to pick you up, at least some of the times, will be very helpful. Highly recommend running the Revive Hive and the shield for that added survivability and damage. Alright, so that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about for what makes this build this build. The core here is Exodus, Chameleon, and then I talked about Everyday Carrier with the Firewall Specialization is really synergizing well. Check the gameplay, you can see it in action. It's really coming together nicely to be able to take advantage of that synergy with Chameleon, Exodus, break our armor, and then get back into action very quickly and come in strong without using up all of our armor kits. It's a great setup, and I highly recommend you test it out this way. But let's talk about variations. So I've tested a lot of things to come to this conclusion. I've released a couple different gameplays. I have even more gameplay that I haven't even dropped yet as well, testing different setups. I'm going to talk about that a little bit here. First, in the last gameplay video that I did drop, I was running Hunter's Fury. So Hunter's Fury is really interesting because it's giving us recovery from the armor on kill as well in the damage that we're getting from the gear set. And we're getting some CC effect, and I was running it with the backpack. So same sort of setup here. I wasn't changing the chest. I was just swapping out strikers for Hunter's Fury with that same 3 and 3. And I mentioned in the video, you can feel that you're doing a lot less damage. Strikers is putting out a lot more damage. The armor on kill was nice from Hunters. The CC effects was nice from Hunters. But we have to run the backpack. Because we're running the gloves, if you're filling in a gear set, you're going to have to choose the chest or the bag. And here we're choosing to run the named chest. So there's no options for us. We're running a gear set with the backpack. And with Hunter's Fury, the chest and the backpack don't add more peak damage. The chest helps you sustain that damage longer because it increases your cooldown window. And the bag increases the range of the CC effect. Actually, I think I can show it to you right here, right? So Hunters was giving us shotgun damage, SMG damage, which as much as Chameleon feels like an SMG, it is an AR, so we're not taking advantage of that. We're getting some 20% armor on kill, 50% health on kill, both very useful, especially the health too, because it'll help us get our health back up to get our health gate. And then the 4 pieces is giving us quite a bit of damage. And this was also felt too in the lack of damage. You need to get kills to proc the stacking part. You need to get 5 kills to get that other 25% amp damage as adding to the base 20 from the enemies within 15 meters. So, as much as we're a damage setup and we are getting quite a few kills, the 10-second window is tough in Legendary in group to be rolling kills every 10 seconds. And I was not feeling the second half of the damage. So if you're just looking at that first half too, compared to Strikers, you just blast them and you get your stacks up, and our weapon shoots pretty damn fast. I think it's over 1,000 RPM. Yeah. 1035 RPM. We're getting our stacks up with Strikers nicely. And again, we're not even using the chest. So we're using the backpack Strikers. So it's 100 stacks. This effect was honestly pretty nice. It was pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. It was pretty cool. But I don't think it was worth it. If it's worth it for you, check it out. Because like I said, it's pretty cool. But I like the damage that we're getting. And I think we're getting enough survivability from that chest. Now, the other thing I touched on briefly was in the Specialization with running Gunner. I tested out that first, obviously, because I was saying how I like Gunner a lot. So I went with that for, again, I'll show it here. We're getting 30% bonus armor times 2 from the chest, and we're getting armor on kill, and just the general handling stuff and the rate of fire. Gunner's pretty nice and pretty useful overall, and we get some foam grenades for some CC if we do need. So I do think that's a pretty good setup. I would say that you could swap out the specialization for Gunner. I wouldn't go with any of the other specializations, to be honest, especially taking a look at the armor kit. It's really between these two. But the shield kind of is a make or break. If everything else was the same, and like Firewall didn't come with this shield that's giving us extra damage, I would say go back and forth if you want. It's up to you. But the shield is just that little bit nicer, and especially for me, given that I have no builds with the Firewall specialization, I was like, this is the perfect reason to make my first one. So I would recommend either of the two, but Firewall for me. Now, the other thing I tested in variations here was around the chest. This was another one of the chests that I tested. Again, I was going for utility chests because we have damage everywhere else, and the chest was a place where I feel like we could get enough utility to round off the damage and get us back in action fast out. Again, that's the whole purpose of the build, and that's where Vanguard was interesting, but just not good enough. Vanguard's cool because, one, it'll help your teammates, but it gives you an invulnerable shield for 5 seconds. So the idea with running Vanguard was that you proc smokescreen, right? You've stripped all your armor, but then if you time it right, you pull out an invulnerable shield for 5 seconds with your Chameleon getting fully refreshed, and then you can really lay into the enemy and not have to worry too much because your shield will be able to take all that heat for the 5 seconds. And then by then you will have gotten a few kills and can get into cover, and so on. Your shield will start taking damage. It's not like it goes away instantly after that 5 seconds. We still have a 2.6, 2.7 million health shield, right? And Palisades was cool because it gives us 10% armor on kill, which is nice for that sustainability. So this made a lot of sense to me on paper, and I still think it does, but I didn't love the timing of having to also manage Vanguard timing, right? I was talking about how it takes quite a bit of practice and skill to time that Chameleon Exodus thing, so having to worry about another cooldown on your bar and making sure Vanguard, which doesn't even run the same cycle, right? It's 25 seconds, and then you get the thing for 5 seconds. It doesn't run on the same cycle, and it was like too confusing to have to do. It just wasn't worth the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. I didn't want to deal with also managing Vanguard. I found I got a much more utility and much more uptime from the everyday carrier, and that's why this is the final setup. Alright, y'all, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into all the little decisions that came together to make this build what it is. It is super strong. I've been loving it. You might even see some more gameplay with it, and this one is actually strong enough to, I'm telling you, I'm keeping this in my build loadouts. This is not some build that I'm just releasing to take advantage of the hype. I'm actually using it. It's very rewarding. It's very fun. I highly recommend you put this in your setup as well. And we talked about some variations so that you can make it your own for your playstyle. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Till then, enjoy.